the first thing we're going to be doing is starting our granny square. Okay, so this is round one. I'm going to take you through making a slip knot, followed by making a chain, and then we will make the first round of trebles on our granny square. What you're going to need is you're going to need your yarn, you're going to need your hook, so that will be a 4.0 millimeter or a 4.5 millimeter. You'll need your scissors for cutting the threads and a stitch marker, because we will mark the chain that you will have to join your round with. Okay. To make a slip knot, take the short end of your yarn and cross it over the long end of your yarn. Then with your long end, bring it across the middle of the loop, and then to pick up, we're going to push this one that's crossed over through the loop and then pull. And there you have your slip knot. It is called a slip knot because when you pull the working yarn, it will make the loop smaller, and if you pull the short end, it will make your loop larger. It's a slip knot because we can undo it. There we go, and the loop is gone. So now we have the loop on our hook. For ease, hold the short tail against the handle of the hook in your right hand, or if you're left-handed, put it in your left hand. Okay, now I like to hold my loop with my index finger. It stops it from moving around too much while I prepare my yarn. So now I'm ready. I've got my working yarn wrapped around the index finger of my left hand. I also have it wrapped around my little finger to hold it tight. Okay, so we need it tight. This is what gives us our tension. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my hook under the working yarn, but pull that working yarn here through the loop that I have on my hook, like so. And I've made my first chain. So again, I'm going to put my hook from the front and under my working yarn, and I'm going to angle the head so as to catch the yarn, a bit like hook a duck or using a steering wheel. So I steer the strand that I've just picked up and take it through the loop on my hook. So it's 2 chain, and again, okay, so I'm going to angle the hook around the working yarn, twist it slightly so the working yarn doesn't fall off the end, and then gently glide my hook to my right hand side to take it through the loop that was on the head, and I now have a new loop. Okay, so that's 3. I'm going to do this 3 more times. So we angle the head around the working yarn, hold it tight around the head, and draw the hook through the loop. That's 4. Wrap the yarn round and gently glide it through the loop. That's 5, and once more. And that's 6. So that's my first 6 chain. Now, from here, we're going to make this long line into a loop. Now we need that loop because that's going to be where we make all our stitches on our first round. You see this circle in the middle? This chain is going to make that circle. Okay, Okay, so we're going to locate the very first chain that we made that was close to our slip knot. This here is the slip knot at the beginning, and we're currently looking at the edge of our chain. So I'm just going to remove my hook for a moment and turn the chain right side up. So here is our loop that sits on our hook. And can you see these shapes along the chain? Kind of makes a chevron shape. A chain is made of three parts. We have a front loop and a back loop. And if we turn our chain over, you'll see a series of bumps. And we call these the back bump. So what we'll do is this first back bump, the very first bump, this is where I want to put my hook. So I'm just going to put a stitch marker in it to show me. Okay, can you see that? So that's the back bump. If I turn that over so that you can see the front, okay, can you see the purple of the stitch marker underneath the front bar, front loop and the back loop? So that is your chain stitch, and that's where we're going to insert our hook. Okay, so I've got my hook back in my loop, and I want to make this straight line into a circle. So all I'm going to do is insert my hook from the front to the back in the same space that we put the stitch marker. So I just pick it up like this. Okay, so now I can remove that stitch marker and it's out of my way. So I've now got a chain stitch and the loop on my hook. So what I'm going to do now is what's called a slip stitch. To slip stitch, I'm going to wrap the yarn around my hook head, and then I'm going to use my hook like a steering wheel and draw this strand of yarn through the chain stitch and the loop, all in one movement, like so. There we go. And I've made a circle. So for ease, when it comes to having a go at making the stitches that you need for the first round of the granny square, again I'm going to use a stitch marker, and I'm going to place the stitch marker into the centre of my ring. So you see the opening where I've put the purple stitch marker. That's going to be the space that we hook into for making our granny squares. Okay, so now we're ready to begin our very first round. Now as you can see, I'm holding my loop with it open a little bit so that I can see where it is I need to be going. I've also got my stitch marker here, which is through the centre of that circle, again to show me where I need to put my hook. Now before we begin, we need to be making 3 more chain. The reason we're starting with 3 chain is because it is the same height as the treble stitch that we will be doing next. So let's recall how to make a chain. So from here we are going to angle our hook head around our working yarn, and we are going to gently pull our hook towards our right hand side, or left if you're a left-hander, and take it through the loop that was on our hook, and that's 1 chain. We're going to repeat that process twice more. 2, and with this last one you don't want to make it too tight. We need to make it quite large because we will be slip stitching into it a little bit later on. I'm going to place my stitch marker under the front loop and the back loop of that last chain that I made. Okay, so the stitch marker is now sitting between the 3 strands of the yarn. So I have my front loop and my second loop at the top, and if I turn it over, you can see the back bump is also wrapped around the stitch marker. This is so that we know which stitch we need to slip stitch into when we come to the end of our round. This will be the first time that you'll see a treble stitch being made. In England we call it a treble stitch. Americans give it a different name. It's the same stitch, different name. You'll find the abbreviations and the stitch names on the classroom handouts in the introduction section of the classroom. You will see on the introduction longhand writing on how to create a treble stitch. So step 1, I like to use my index finger to hold the loop that's on my hook so that it doesn't get too tight. So what I'm going to do now is make a treble stitch. So I will yarn over my hook, and then using my index finger to hold it in place, I'm going to locate the center of this circle, and I'm going to go in from the front through the circle. Wrap my hook over my yarn, and now I'm going to draw my hook back towards me through the circle. Once I've come through, you'll see that I've got 3 strands. Let's move that along the shaft. I have 3 strands around my hook. 1, 2 and 3. The one at the front of the hook head, that's going to be the first one we draw through, and then the middle one, and then the last one. So to finish our treble, we are going to place the yarn over our hook, and what we'll do now is this yarn we've picked up, we are going to gently draw it through our first loop and the loop in the middle to take them off of our hook, and it gives us 2 more strands to work with, 2 more loops. So we need to do the same process again. We yarn around our hook head, and then we are going to gently steer this yarn through the first loop first and then the last loop, and that is a full treble stitch. I'm going to make another one now. So that process again, I'm going to do it really slowly for you. To make a treble, yarn over into the circle, yarn over and pull our hook back towards us out of the circle. We now have 3 strands. Okay, we're going to yarn over, and we're going to take that yarn through the first loop, bringing it off of our hook, and the middle loop, taking that off of our hook and leaving us with 2 loops. Yarn over, and we're going to take off the first loop and the second loop to complete our second treble. We have our 3 chain that we began with, which we count as a treble throughout the project. Then we have our first treble and our second treble. So these 3 stitches here make up our first side. So we count them as 1, 2, 3. And we can push them up together like so. So they make a group. Now we need to make our very first corner. To do this, we need 2 chain from where we are now. So again, to chain, yarn over through the loop, yarn over through the loop. That's 2 chain. Okay, so to continue on, I'm now holding my work out of the way so that I can see the nice big circle that I am working into. I'm just going to hold the stitch marker because it gives me something to hold on to. So now we've done our corner space here, we're going to work back into this circle. So we're going to do a group of 3 trebles. Yarn around our hook, into the circle, pick up the yarn and draw it back through the front of the circle so that we have 3 strands around our hook head. Yarn round our hook, gently glide it through the first and the middle strands to take them off of our hook, and then yarn round again and draw those through the other 2 strand loops on our hook to take them off, and leaving us once again with 1 loop. Number 2 treble. Again, yarn round, into the circle, hook over the yarn, bring it through to the front. You'll have 3 loops around your hook. Yarn round, gently draw that through the first and the middle loops. Yarn round and draw it through the final 2 loops. That's treble number 2. Treble number 3. Yarn round, insert your hook into the circle from the front through to the back, always front through back unless otherwise stated. Angle your hook over the working yarn and pull that through to the front. Yarn round your hook through number 1 loop and number 2, leaves you with 2 loops, and then yarn round and take it the other 2 loops off your hook, leaving you back with 1. I'm going to show you each one of the trebles we just made. So the first one is the one that's nearest the loop that's still attached to our hook, and you'll see it's kind of got a stem down, and you'll see that it has 2 strands of yarn that are wrapping around the circle. So if I show you with the scissors, so imagine the scissors are the circle in the middle, and the bottom of your treble stitch will have 2 pieces of yarn wrapping around the circle. Okay, so here's number 1, here's number 2, and number 3. Now what I'm also going to do to show you the top of the stitch, so that was the side, the bit that you're looking at as you're working. So can you see this V shape here? So it's made up of that strand and this strand, and that is a whole stitch. Kind of looks like a V there and there, and that is the stitch. Our corners are made of chain stitches, and we're going to do 2 chain. So we wrap the yarn around our hook and draw it through the loop twice for 2 chain. You'll notice that our circle is starting to get a little bit smaller, so all we have to do is shuffle those trebles round a bit. See, I've now made my circle larger just by pushing all my stitches to my right hand side. If you're left handed, push them to your left because you will work left to right. And now we're going to make side 3, which is another group of 3 trebles. Yarn round our hook into the circle. Yarn over, hook over the yarn to draw it back through to the front. 3 loops. Yarn over, take it through the first loop and the second loop to take them off your hook. Yarn over and glide your hook through those other 2 loops to take them off. So that's number 1. Number 2, so yarn over into the circle, pick up your yarn through to the front, yarn over, take off the first 2 loops, yarn over, take off the last 2 loops. So that's number 2. Number 3, yarn over, in the circle, yarn over, draw it through to the front, yarn over, take off the first and the second loop, yarn over, take off the first and the second loop. Can you see we now have a space here? That's our corner. We made that with the 2 chain that we did before making these latest trebles. So we're going to do that again to make another corner. Yarn over and through the loop that's on our hook twice. 1, 2. Doesn't look like a corner at the moment, but when we make our 4th side into our circle, this will then close up and become a corner space. We're going to make our final group of 3 trebles. Yarn over, into our circle, hook around the yarn and draw it through to the front. Yarn over, take off the first and the middle loop. Yarn over, take off the first and last loop. That's 1. Yarn over, into our circle, grab our yarn and bring it back through to the front. Yarn over, through the first and the middle loop, yarn over, through the first and the last loop. Treble number 2. Now on to the 3rd. Yarn over, into the circle, pick up the yarn and bring it through to the front. Yarn over and draw it through the first and the middle loop, and then yarn over and draw it through the first and last loop. That's the last treble. We need to finish this off by making a corner space here as well. So that's 2 more chain. So it's yarn over, draw it through the loop that's on your hook twice. And now we're ready to close off round 1. So to do that, do you remember we placed a stitch marker in our last chain that we made right at the very beginning? I hope you did the same as me, because this will make it easier to locate the 3rd of 3 chain, which is where we will slip stitch to join our first round. So I already put a stitch marker in my 3rd chain, and I put it through the front and the back loop of the stitch. Okay, so that's where I want to put my hook. I want to hook underneath that strand and that strand. Yes, I do use my fingers sometimes to push the stitch on. So now my hook is in the same stitch as my stitch marker. To make a slip stitch, all you need to do is put the yarn around your hook and draw it through the stitch and the loop in one movement. I'm going to take my stitch marker out because I can feel it's quite tight and I need to come all the way through, so I need that little bit of space. So I've picked up my yarn and I'm going to draw it through the 3rd of 3 chain and the loop that's already on my hook to close my round. So just gently pull my hook to my right hand side all the way through, and that closes the round and gives us that final corner space. And to fasten off, cut the yarn that's attached to our ball. So in the same way, wrap it around our hook, and we're just going to draw our hook through the loop all the way, so the strand comes all the way through. Give it a little tug and we've fastened off. So this is our first round of our granny square, and you will see that you have a corner space next to where you fastened off. Then you'll have 1, 2, 3 trebles, followed by a corner, and 1, 2, 3 trebles, and the third corner, and 1, 2, 3 trebles, fourth corner, and 1, 2, 3. So 4 corners and 12 trebles to make your very first round of a granny square. Well done.